did Christ exist? Maybe he didn't. If he existed, did he resurrect? Maybe he didn't. If you have control over all the faculties, this is the life that you would live. Paul went so peaceful to his execution that the people who executed him became Christians. Just imagine if this was you. What would you die for? What would you die? Would you die for something? So we will speak today about Jesus Christ. We will touch, let's say, the heart of the doubt, the heart of the faith. We'll take the questions. Did Christ exist? Maybe he didn't. If he existed, did he resurrect? Maybe he didn't. If he resurrected, was he one with God? Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. If he was one with God, why did he do this? Why didn't he do something else? Now, if he would be one with God, would this be the life? 3.5 years, quick, poof. One sermon, nothing written on paper from his own hand, and then crucifixion. If you have control over all the faculties, this is the life that you would live. So let's look into these questions with lucidity and with an open mind. The 4 questions: did Christ exist? Did he rise from the dead? Was he one with God? And if so, why? Like this. So, did Christ exist? Most historians say yes. There was a book that collected by Bart Ehrman that collected different testimonies. There are 30 written testimonies of Christ from the time that he lived, compares to 10 that speak about Emperor Tiberius. So there is, Christ was a carpenter's boy from an insignificant Jewish city in Nazareth, and he has 3 times more sources speaking about him in his life than the emperor of the time. Yeah, so 25 different historians, 30 sources that mention him, many of them non-Christians. So a Stoic senator, says the following. He mentioned how wrong it is to kill wise men, and he mentions the assassination of Pythagoras, Socrates, and his contemporary, Jesus Christ. Even the Talmud, which was opposing Christ, we find testimonies of his life, his Last Supper, and his crucifixion. So did Christ exist? From a scholarly perspective, probably yes. Did Christ resurrect? Yeah. So resurrection is pretty rare, right? It's not something very, very common. It's not like somebody dies. It's, oh, he dies, but there's still a chance he would resurrect. Let's wait before we sell his apartment, right? It's a pretty rare thing, and sounds completely paranormal. And yet there are 400 testimonies in the Christian world. Again, there's this book from Albert Hebert that mentions 400 cases of resurrections. For example, in the 4th century, there was a saint called Saint Macarius, and they were arguing. He was arguing with one of the bishops that says, no way that Christ was flesh and blood and resurrected from the dead. He was a kind of spirit being. He was a deity, and he looked human, but he wasn't human. He was God, and then he kind of died, but he didn't die because he wasn't human. And then, of course, he resurrected, because anyway, he wasn't human. And Macarius says, no, he was human, totally human and totally God, and he did resurrect, and the bishop couldn't understand. So Macarius was thinking and praying. He says, okay, you know what? I'm going to resurrect someone so you can see. So he went to the graveyard and resurrected somebody who was dead for some years. The person became his disciples and lived with him for several more years after that. Saint Patrick, known to many people because of the day where everybody gets drunk in the St. Patrick's Day and wear green. So St. Patrick resurrected 30 people. Yeah, in his life, he resurrected 30 people. And he holds, you see, Ireland was pagan. And the entirety of Ireland was turned Christian in one generation without almost any bloodshed. This is the only time, at least that I know in history, of such a conversion that happened so smoothly. The only other time is in Tibet. And it happened by St. Patrick and Padma in Tibet because they were both great miracle workers. And that was enough. You don't need to kill anyone. If you make enough miracles, people just convert, which they did in the 4th century in Ireland. And there are 30 cases of resurrection there. Again, on the 14th or 15th century, we have St. Vincent Ferrer that resurrected also 30 people. He told the people, I am the angel of doomsday. You need to convert right now. This is the last chance. And the people mocked him. He was there speaking in front of 30,000 people and they mocked him. And then he said, okay, there is a funeral taking place close by. Go to the funeral and bring me the dead person. And they bring the dead person. Vincent Ferrer touches him and says, arise, my son. And the corpse arises. And then he asks the corpse, who am I? And the corpse says, you are the angel of the last day. And he says, good, thank you very much. You can go back now, and puts him back to sleep. Just to make a point. Yeah. So the cases of resurrection are common. There is at least one from the 20th century with a great Christian saint, Padre Pio. A woman came to him with a child. The child was very sick, like a baby. The baby was very sick. She came on the train to meet Padre Pio. He was condemned by the church. He was persecuted for 10 years. He couldn't meet anyone. He was way too saintly for the Catholic Church. But after these 10 years, he was again willing to meet a certain amount of people. And one of them was this woman who came with a child that was sick and dying. And on the way, the child died. The baby basically died. She went completely crazy and she put him in the suitcase. And she brought him in a suitcase all the way to Padre Pio. She waited online. The corpse of the baby is in the suitcase. And she wanted to go punch Padre Pio for not healing her son before the son died. And she opens the suitcase and she's like mad with grief. And she puts the baby there to Padre Pio. She says, how could you have done this to me? I have faith in you. I have faith in you. And now my only child is dead. And Padre Pio takes the child and holds him. And he says, but my dear daughter, your child is not dead. He's only sleeping. And the child returns to her alive. So even in the 20th century, we have the testimony of this woman. There's a lot of testimonies and a lot of scientific men who have researched the life of Padre Pio. These things are not rumors. They are not anonymous Facebook posts or something from the 30s, but something that was researched. The boy lived from then onwards. Now, Christ didn't just resurrect others. He resurrected himself. And this is something that we do find also in the world of yoga. We find Babaji and the Tibetan counterpart of Padma resurrecting others. And we find in the yoga tradition, Sri Yukteswar, who resurrected from the dead, and Yogananda could hold him and feel his body. and we find Swami Shivananda, after just a few days after his death, he appeared to Swami Satyananda, to his main disciple, and Swami Satyananda received from him his mission. And he said, I touched his feet. I could feel, it was not a vision. I could feel him. I touched flesh and bones. So such resurrections or individual resurrections appear also in other traditions. Also Milarepa, when he passed away, his disciples were fighting what to do with his remnants. So he resurrected himself and says, guys, look, this is what, please stop fighting. This is what you should do with my body. This is what you should do with this. This is what you should do with that. Okay? Are we all clear now? Good. I need to go and return, continue his process of dying. The resurrection of Christ brought a tremendous amount of faith in his disciples. And they were willing to bet their life that they saw an actual Jesus, not a ghost, not a dream, not a vision, not something that you see in meditation. They saw a human being that was dead and then was alive, and they were willing to bet their life on it, and they all, except John, really died. Peter was crucified backwards, Paul was beheaded, Matthias was crucified. They basically all said, we are going to testify that we have seen Christ risen, and it's more important to me than my own life to be a witness of that. And they were put to the trial. They could have just said, oh, no, you know what, maybe I was delusional that day. I think I had fever when I saw Christ risen. Maybe it was my own delusion, and they could have saved their life. But they didn't. They went with a very bold head, very vertical. Just imagine if this was you. What would you die for? What would you die? Would you die for something? And what would you die for without fear? With peace. Paul went so peaceful to his execution that the people who executed him became Christians. They couldn't imagine how a person can be so much at peace, so relaxed, so virtuous, so fearless in front of death. And they said, whatever he believes in, it's got to be true because everybody else is afraid of death. But Paul saw Christ. And so did Peter after he resurrected. And so they had a very different view of death. Did Christ exist historically? Almost absolutely yes. Did he resurrect? There's a lot of evidence that such a thing is possible. Next question. So we're going from scandalous to very scandalous. Okay. First, did he exist? Not so scandalous. Did he resurrect? Pretty scandalous. And now, very scandalous. Is he one with God?
Hey guys, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content on spirituality, Tantra and more.
And if you want to sign up for our online classes or for our retreats, you can see our website on the description below.